The silent vanguard. The observation deck of Proxima Station offered the best view in human space. Captain Alina Reyes stood before the sprawling viewport, hands clasped behind her back, watching distant stars glimmer against the void. To most observers, she appeared to be a standard colonial defense officer enjoying a moment of peace. In reality, she commanded more firepower than anyone realized. "Beautiful, isn't it?" said Commander Jackson, joining her at the viewport. "The colonists never get tired of this view." 7 million people, Alina whispered. 7 million lives under our protection. Jackson nodded solemnly. "Intel reports the Thelosian diplomatic vessel will dock within the hour. First official contact with their empire." "And they requested this meeting?" Alina asked, her dark eyes narrowing slightly. "Yes. Apparently, they've decided humans are finally worth acknowledging after 50 years of space exploration." Jackson's tone carried a hint of bitterness. "Took them long enough." Alina turned from the viewport. "I'll meet them in Diplomatic Chamber 4. Have Response Team Sigma on standby." Quietly. "You think they're hostile?" "I think," Alina said carefully, "that species don't suddenly request diplomatic meetings after ignoring us for half a century without a reason." The Thelosian diplomats towered over the humans, their segmented exoskeletons gleaming under the chamber lights. Ambassador Krell's mandibles clicked in what Alina had been told was amusement. His translator device converted the clicks and chittering sounds into a smooth, synthesized voice. "Captain Rise, I bring greetings from Emperor Razik of the Thelosian Empire, ruler of the 7 systems and protector of the galactic rim." Alina bowed slightly. "The United Earth colonies welcome the Thelosian Empire. We look forward to establishing mutual—" "Let us dispense with pleasantries," Krell interrupted. "My emperor has taken notice of your species' rapid expansion. 12 colonies in 50 years is ambitious for such a young race." Alina maintained her diplomatic smile. "Humanity has always been explorers." "Indeed." Krell's compound eyes reflected the light unnervingly. "The Emperor believes it would benefit both our civilizations if your expansion were to be more regulated." "Regulated?" Alina felt a chill run down her spine. "A simple arrangement. Your colonies will redirect 30% of all resource production to Thelosian interests. In exchange, we will provide protection and technological guidance." Alina's smile vanished. "Ambassador Krell, I believe you misunderstand the nature of this meeting. We sought diplomatic relations, not vassalage." Krell's mandibles clicked rapidly. "You misunderstand your position in the galactic order, Captain. You are newcomers. Fragile. Your military capabilities are minimal. A handful of patrol vessels, some orbital platforms. The Thelosian Empire has ruled this sector for millennia. Nevertheless, we must decline your generous offer," Alina replied, steel entering her voice. "Humanity will maintain its independence." "Independence." Krell made a sound that needed no translation. "Mockery. Emperor Razik predicted your response. He instructed me to inform you that this was not truly an offer, Captain. It was a courtesy notification." Alina's hand moved slightly toward her communicator. "Is that a threat, Ambassador?" "It is reality. You have one standard cycle to consider your position. After that, the Emperor will demonstrate the consequences of defiance." Krell turned to leave, then paused. "For your species' sake, I hope you choose wisely." As the Thelosian delegation departed, Commander Jackson stepped to Alina's side. "That went well. Contact Admiral Way," Alina said quietly. "Authorization code Omega-7 Delta. Tell him it's time to check the weather." Jackson's eyes widened. "That's the contingency protocol. You really think?" Alina's gaze remained fixed on the door where the Thelosians had exited. "I think we should hope for peace and prepare for war." The emergency session of the Colonial Defense Council convened 16 hours later. The massive holographic table in the center of the chamber displayed a 3-dimensional map of human space. Admiral James Way, Supreme Commander of Earth's Defense Forces, stood at the head of the table, his weathered face grim as 12 colony representatives, and the President of the United Earth Government looked to him for answers. At 400 hours, all communication with Proxima Colony ceased. Admiral Way reported, his voice steady despite the gravity of his words. Long-range sensors detected the energy signatures of approximately 60 Felosian warships entering the system. President Alvarez, a small woman with steel-gray hair, leaned forward. Casualties. Unknown, Madam President, but based on radiation readings. Y paused, composing himself. We believe they used antimatter weapons. Proxima Station has been completely destroyed. Silence fell across the chamber. 7 million lives, extinguished without warning. Captain Reyes asked a colony representative. No survivors reported. Way replied softly. President Alvarez stood, her face ashen but determined. Admiral Way, it appears the Felosian Empire has declared war on humanity. What are our options? The Admiral pressed a button on the table's control panel. The holographic display shifted, zooming out to show the vast territories of the Felosian Empire compared to the small cluster of human colonies. Conventional assessment would suggest we have no viable military response. Why began? The Felosians possess over 3,000 warships that we know of. Their technology is centuries beyond our publicly acknowledged capabilities. On paper, this is a fight we cannot win. On paper, the President repeated, her eyes meeting Way's. But this situation calls for Operation Nightfall, doesn't it? The room grew tense. Most colony representatives shifted uncomfortably. Only the highest levels of government knew what Operation Nightfall truly entailed. Admiral Way nodded once. Madam President, I believe it's time to drop the veil. President Alvarez turned to her chief of staff. Clear the room of all personnel without nightfall clearance. After several minutes of controlled chaos, only 7 people remained in the chamber. The President activated additional security protocols, and the room's defensive systems hummed to life, creating an impenetrable information barrier. Show them, she ordered. Admiral Way entered a complex sequence on the table's control panel. The holographic display transformed dramatically. Hidden bases appeared within asteroids, beneath planetary oceans, and inside hollowed-out moons. Secret shipyards materialized throughout human space and beyond. For 50 years, Way explained, humanity has maintained a public facade of minimal military capability. We've projected an image of a peaceful, somewhat naive species taking its first steps into the galactic community. The hologram now showed massive fleets concealed in dimensional pocket spaces, weapons platforms disguised as research stations, and defense systems embedded within seemingly civilian infrastructure. Meanwhile, we've built the largest military force in known space. One of the colony representatives gasped. How many ships? 900,000 warships, Way answered calmly, plus support vessels, automated defense platforms, and specialized weapons systems. Impossible, whispered another representative. How could we hide such a force? The simulation doctrine, President Alvarez explained. From humanity's earliest encounters with alien life, we recognized a pattern from our own history. Technologically advanced civilizations that openly displayed their military power often faced coalitions formed against them out of fear. So we chose a different path. Admiral Wee nodded. Every public mining operation was secretly producing warship components. Every research outpost was developing military technology. We kept our true capabilities hidden, waiting and watching to see how the galactic community would receive us. And now, asked the representative from Mars Colony. Now we face extinction if we don't act, Way said. The Felosians believe they're eliminating a minor annoyance. They expect us to surrender or fight a hopeless battle with our few visible defense ships. President Alvarez stood straight, her decision already made. Admiral Way, before we unleash the full might of humanity, I want one final diplomatic attempt. The Felosians must be given a chance to withdraw and make amends. With respect, Madam President, Way countered, They've already demonstrated their intentions by destroying Proxima. Nevertheless, she insisted, we must be better than our enemies. Send an envoy to Emperor Razik with terms for peace. They have destroyed one colony. They must acknowledge this crime, make reparations, and withdraw their forces immediately. Wei bowed his head slightly. As you wish, Madam President. And if they refuse? Asked the Mars representative. President Alvarez's eyes hardened. Then they will learn why humanity survived its bloody history to reach the stars. Emperor Razik's palace on the Thelosian homeworld was a monument to conquest. Trophy halls displayed relics from 100 subjugated species. The emperor himself sat upon a throne carved from the crystallized remains of extinct alien worlds, his massive exoskeleton dwarfing the human diplomat who stood before him. You come to beg for your species' survival. Razik's translated voice echoed through the vast chamber. Ambassador Chen, a slender woman with calm eyes, bowed slightly. I come with terms for peace, Emperor Razik. Peace. The emperor's mandibles clicked rapidly in what his courtiers recognized as laughter. There is no peace between the hammer and the nail, human. Your colony was destroyed as a warning. The rest will follow unless you submit to our rule. Chen unfolded a small device that projected a document between them. We propose these terms. First, acknowledge the unprovoked attack on Proxima Colony. Second, provide reparations for the 7 million lives lost. Third, withdraw your forces from human space immediately. Emperor Razik studied the human with something approaching curiosity. Your species has courage. I'll grant you that. But courage without strength is merely the final comfort of the doomed. He waved a massive appendage, and the Imperial viewscreen activated, showing Thelosian warships moving into position around 3 more human colonies. Your species will be remembered as a footnote in our glorious history, Razik declared. But I am not without mercy. Submit now, and some of your people may survive as productive subjects of the Empire. Ambassador Chen's face remained impassive, but her eyes grew cold. This is your only warning, Emperor Razik. Cease all military action against humanity, or we will respond with appropriate force. The throne room filled with the clicking laughter of Thelosian nobles and military officers. The emperor rose to his full height, towering over the human diplomat. Your species possesses 15 patrol vessels and a handful of orbital platforms, Razik said dismissively. We have monitored your development since your first interstellar flight. What force could you possibly bring against the Thelosian Empire? Chen smiled slightly, the first expression she had shown since entering the palace. You'll find out in approximately 12 hours, Emperor Razik. Remember this moment. Remember you were given a choice. As guards moved to escort the ambassador away, she spoke one final time, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber. 7 million souls cry out for justice, and they will have it. Within the dimensional pocket space designated Forge, Admiral Wei stood on the bridge of the flagship Reckoning. Around him, officers prepared for the largest military operation in human history. Ambassador Chen's shuttle has cleared Thelosian space, reported his executive officer, Commander Rivera. The diplomatic approach failed, as expected. We nodded grimly. Activate the emergency war protocol. Authorization code. Prometheus Unbound. Throughout human space and beyond, hidden installations hummed to life. Inside asteroids, beneath planetary oceans, within hollow moons, massive doors opened. Ships that had never seen real space were brought to launch position. On command stations across human territory, status indicators changed from dormant red to active green. In the central operations chamber of Forge Station, Commander Rivera watched as the counter ticked upward, tallying each vessel as it reported ready status. 100,000, 300,000, 500,000. All units report ready, Admiral, Rivera announced, her voice tight with emotion. 900,000 warships awaiting your command. Admiral Wei stood before the main viewport, watching as his own command ship powered up weapons systems that no alien civilization had ever witnessed. His mind went to Proxima Colony, to Captain Reyes and the millions of innocents who had died without warning or mercy. "The galaxy thinks it knows us," Wei said softly. "Today, they learn the truth." He straightened his uniform and gave the order that would change galactic history forever. "All ships launch. Weapons free. Show them what humanity is capable of when provoked." As the massive fleet moved into formation, Wei whispered to himself, "This is for Proxima." The reckoning storm. Commander Talia Voss had never seen real combat. Like most officers aboard the stealth cruiser Phantom, she had trained in simulations, thousands of hours perfecting tactics against enemies who didn't know humanity's true strength. Now, standing on the bridge as the dimensional pocket space collapsed around them, revealing normal space near the Thelosian colony world of Krell Prime, her training would finally be tested. "Status report," she ordered, her voice steadied despite the hammering of her heart. "All systems nominal, Commander," replied Lieutenant Reeves at Tactical. "Weapons hot, shields at maximum. Battle Group Typhoon is forming up around us." The massive view screen showed hundreds of human warships emerging from dimensional space, their sleek, dark hulls absorbing nearby light. Designed for stealth and overwhelming firepower, the vessels of Battle Group Typhoon had never before operated in real space. For decades, they had been constructed, maintained, and crewed in absolute secrecy. "Any sign the Thelosians have detected us?" Talia asked. "Negative, Commander. Their sensor grid remains focused on their main fleet approaching the human colony at Arcturus. They have no idea we're here." Talia allowed herself a thin smile. "Send the signal to Admiral Wei. Battle Group Typhoon is in position." Across 12 strategic locations in Thelosian space, similar scenes unfolded as humanity's hidden armada slipped into position. 900,000 warships, more than the combined fleets of every known spacefaring civilization, prepared to strike simultaneously. On the bridge of the Thelosian flagship Eternal Dominion, Emperor Rezek himself had come to witness the subjugation of another human colony. The massive view screen showed his armada approaching Arcturus colony, where 3 human defense ships waited in what the Emperor considered a pathetic show of resistance. "Emperor," General Kraz bowed deeply, his exoskeleton creaking. "The human colony is within range. They've activated their defense grid, but it poses no threat to our fleet. Have they sent any messages begging for mercy?" Rezek asked, mandibles clicking in amusement. "None, Emperor. They maintain communication silence." The Emperor settled his massive form into the command throne. "Curious. Perhaps they've accepted their fate. Open a channel. I wish to see the fear in their eyes before we destroy them." "My Emperor," interrupted the sensor officer, his voice trembling. "We're detecting unusual energy fluctuations throughout the system." "Explain," Rezek demanded. "The readings are inconsistent with known phenomena. They appear to be concentrated behind the 5th planet and within the asteroid belt." The Emperor waved a dismissive appendage, "Some desperate human trick. Proceed with the attack." The weapons officer had just begun targeting procedures when alarms suddenly blared across the bridge. The sensor display erupted with thousands of new contacts appearing simultaneously throughout the system. "What is happening?" Rezek roared, rising from his throne. The tactical display showed waves of unidentified vessels materializing around his fleet, above, below, and on all sides. The sensor officer's voice cracked as he reported, "Emperor, we're detecting 5,000 warships emerging around our position." "Impossible," General Kraz whispered. "Our intelligence indicated the humans possess only 15 combat vessels." Before anyone could respond, the communications officer called out, "Emperor, we're receiving similar reports from all 12 battle groups. Unknown vessels are appearing throughout Thelosian space." The main view screen shifted to show real-time footage from across the Empire. Massive human fleets surrounded key worlds. Defense stations exploded silently in the vacuum of space. Shipyards burned. The Emperor's mandibles clicked rapidly in growing alarm. "How many vessels?" he demanded. The sensor officer's appendages trembled as he answered. "Current count exceeds 800,000, and still rising, Emperor." Silence fell across the bridge, broken only by the continuing alarms. "Impossible," Rezik repeated, sinking back onto his throne. "Incoming transmission from the human fleet," the communications officer announced. The screen changed to show Admiral James Way's face, his expression as cold and unyielding as space itself. "Emperor Rezik," Way said quietly, "you were warned." In the Galactic Council chamber on neutral territory, representatives from 42 spacefaring civilizations watched in stunned silence as live feeds showed human warships appearing simultaneously across Thelusian space. The council leader, an ancient being from the respected Ardani species, called for order as panicked discussions broke out across the chamber. "This cannot be real," insisted the representative from the Valerian Confederacy, their bioluminescent skin flashing with anxiety. "No civilization could hide such military power. This must be some form of deception." "Our sensors confirm it," replied the Makari delegate, 6 eyes blinking in sequence. "The humans have deployed approximately 900,000 warships. This is the largest military force ever recorded in galactic history." "How?" demanded the Jaravi ambassador. "We've monitored their development for decades. Where did these ships come from?" A junior aide rushed into the chamber and whispered urgently to the council leader, whose expression grew even more concerned. "I have just received word," the leader announced, "that the Thelusian Empire's primary fleet has surrendered at Arcturus. Emperor Rezik has been captured." "How long did the battle last?" asked the Valerian representative. The council leader checked the report twice before answering. 11 minutes. As fears spread through the chamber, the doors opened, and a human representative entered. The room fell silent as Ambassador Chen, the same diplomat who had stood before Emperor Rezik hours earlier, walked calmly to the speaker's podium. "Honored representatives of the Galactic Council," she began, her voice measured and clear, "humanity comes in peace. We always have." She gestured to the screens still showing human fleets throughout Thelusian space. "But now you know what happens when that peace is broken." Aboard the Reckoning, Admiral Way received the reports from across former Thelusian space. Most of the enemy fleet had surrendered after their flagship was captured. There had been a few isolated instances of resistance, quickly neutralized with minimal casualties on both sides. "Emperor Rezik has been secured," reported Commander Rivera as she entered the war room. "He's being held aboard the prison ship Justice, along with his highest-ranking officers." We nodded, studying the holographic map that showed the entire galaxy. Human fleets, represented as blue dots, now controlled all of Thelusian space. But there was something else catching his attention: movement along the borders of 2 neighboring empires. "The Vestarian and Krogan empires," Way said, pointing to 2 flashing regions on the map. "Their fleets are mobilizing." Rivera frowned. "They were supposed to be neutral in this conflict." "They've been secretly supplying the Thelusians for years," Way replied. "Our intelligence units found evidence in Razik's private communications. They hoped the Thelusians would eliminate humanity, clearing the way for their own expansion." "Your orders, Admiral." Way's eyes hardened. "Spring the trap." Commander Talia Voss and the Phantom received new deployment orders. Her battle group was being redirected to intercept a Vestarian fleet moving toward the human colony at New Terra. "The Vestarians?" Lieutenant Reeves asked in surprise. "I thought we were only fighting the Thelusians." "It seems the Vestarians have chosen sides," Talia replied grimly. "They're moving against New Terra, thinking we're too preoccupied with the Thelusians to defend it." "They don't know what they're facing," Reeves said. Talia's face grew solemn. "No, and that's the tragedy here. If these empires had just left us alone, we would have remained peaceful neighbors. Now they'll all learn what humanity is capable of when provoked." The view screen showed their battle group changing course, joined by thousands more ships emerging from dimensional gates. The Phantom's engines hummed with power as they accelerated toward their new target. In the following days, news of the Felosian defeat spread across the galaxy like wildfire. On thousands of worlds, alien species watched in horrified fascination as their information networks displayed the same impossible images. Countless human warships overwhelming the Vestarian and Krogan forces in hours. Within a standard week, 3 of the galaxy's most powerful empires had fallen to a species most had dismissed as unremarkable newcomers. Diplomatic missions from a dozen alien nations arrived at Earth, seeking assurances that humanity's expansion would not threaten their territories. Admiral Wei stood before the United Earth Government Council, delivering his final report on Operation Nightfall. The combined Felosian, Vestarian, and Krogan fleets have been neutralized, he stated. Their military installations have been dismantled. Civilian populations remain untouched. We've established provisional governments on their core worlds until their people can determine their own leadership. President Alvarez nodded with approval. And our losses? Minimal, Madam President. 17 ships destroyed, 42 damaged, 212 personnel lost. Why paused? A fraction of what we lost at Proxima. The council chamber was silent as the magnitude of humanity's victory sank in. What's happening at the Galactic Council? Asked the representative from Europa Colony. Ambassador Chen reports that the council is adjusting to the new reality. Wei replied with a hint of dry humor. Several species have proposed mutual defense pacts with Earth. Others are requesting technological exchange programs. All previous dismissive attitudes toward humanity have mysteriously vanished. A few bitter laughs echoed through the chamber. President Alvarez rose from her seat. The question now facing us is fundamental to our species' future. What kind of galactic power will humanity become? We have revealed ourselves as the dominant military force in known space. How we use that position will define us for generations to come. Admiral Wei stepped forward. If I may, Madam President, throughout human history, great powers have faced this same crossroads. Those who rule through fear eventually fall. Those who lead with justice endure. You suggest clemency for those who would have destroyed us? Asked the Mars representative incredulously. Not clemency, Wei clarified. Justice. The leaders who ordered the attack on Proxima will face trial for war crimes. But we should not punish entire civilizations for the actions of their governments. President Alvarez considered this. What do you propose, Admiral? A new compact, Wei said simply. Offer the fallen empires and all other spacefaring nations terms for peaceful coexistence. Fair trade, cultural exchange, technological cooperation, with the understanding that any future aggression will be met with the full force we've now demonstrated. The council debated Wei's proposal for hours. Eventually, President Alvarez called for a vote. The measure passed with a clear majority. So be it, she declared. Humanity will lead not through conquest, but through justice and strength. Ambassador Chen will present our terms to the Galactic Council tomorrow. 3 months after the Battle of Arcturus, Admiral Wei stood on the observation deck of the newly rebuilt Proxima station. Beside him, Commander Rivera watched as construction drones completed work on a memorial to those lost in the Felosian attack. The galaxy has changed, Rivera said quietly. Every species now knows our true power. We nodded. And yet, most seemed relieved rather than frightened. Relieved. The Felosians, Vestarians, and Krogans had been expanding aggressively for centuries. Many smaller civilizations lived in fear of them. Now those civilizations looked to Earth for protection. Rivera studied the memorial, where the names of 7 million victims scrolled continuously across a wall of remembrance. Was it worth it? All those years of deception, building in secret? Wei considered the question carefully. Operation Nightfall was conceived as a deterrent, a way for humanity to establish itself in the galaxy without appearing threatening. We hoped we would never need to reveal our true strength. But we did. Yes, Wei's gaze drifted to the stars beyond the viewport. And now we bear an even greater responsibility. Having shown the galaxy what humanity is capable of, we must also show them who we truly are. And who is that, Admiral? Wei smiled slightly. A species that values peace but prepares for war. A civilization that chooses justice over vengeance. A people who, even with the power to conquer, choose instead to protect. On the main view screen, a live feed showed the Galactic Council chamber, where representatives from 76 species, the largest gathering in the Council's history, had assembled to sign the new Galactic Compact. At its center stood Ambassador Chen, flanked by delegates from former enemy worlds and newly allied civilizations. "They're calling it the Pax Humana," Rivera remarked. "The human peace." Wei watched as species that had been enemies for millennia now signed a treaty of mutual cooperation and non-aggression. An ironic name, considering it took 900,000 warships to achieve it. Sometimes the strongest force for peace is the capacity for overwhelming war, Rivera observed. Wei nodded slowly. "Let's hope we never need to prove that again." As they watched, the first ships of the new galactic peacekeeping fleet took up positions around the Council world. Vessels from 24 civilizations, serving together under a unified command. Among them flew human ships, no longer hidden, no longer pretending to be less than they were. The galaxy would never be the same again. The stars had witnessed humanity's true power, and now they would witness humanity's true character. And somewhere, Admiral Wei hoped, the 7 million souls of Proxima Colony could rest in peace, knowing their sacrifice had not been in vain. Their loss had revealed humanity's strength, but in the aftermath, it had also revealed humanity's wisdom. The veil had been lifted, the silent vanguard had emerged from shadows, and a storm of reckoning had swept across the stars. But after the storm came renewal.